Operation thing before I start taking notes, so I get ready.
All right,
don't have to
hopefully
wait.
we are heard.
No.
There's no one out there to tell us that we are being heard, so.
So you all set the room?
I am also.
Okay, Mark, you all set, okay. Okay, first up, call the meeting to order. We'll take attendance. Nora Bucko,
Present.
Mark Doxer.
Here.
John Parsons.
Here.
Ron Mancini.
Here.
John Sasso. Michael Colton. John O'Neill here. And then I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the March 9th. Wow, it's been a long time. 2023, we're waiting on that select board. You know how dilatory they can be. So.
I was gonna give you a motion, now I'm gonna reconsider. So moved.
So,
Second.
Second? Okay. Any additions, corrections, deletions to the minutes? Seeing none. That's it. For approval, or Nora Bucko,
Yes.
Mark Doxer,
Yes.
John Parsons,
Yes.
Ron Mancini,
Yes.
John O'Neill, yes. The minutes are approved. Review of the new changes from the select board.
If charges.
Charges. Charges. I should have my reading list. Okay, so it's the bottom of the page. Where it says, add to its charter the following goals. Yeah, and should we read them for the record or just assume that what each one is?
If you want, I'd be willing to
Okay,
speak
talk
a
to
little
them.
bit to
Sure.
kind of what's here. So, with the inability of us to come to closure on the Walgreens building, that kind of reopens the discussion and actually brings it back to where we started and where we thought we were gonna be in the first place. Walgreens had kind of been a potential that ended up kind of disrupting things. So that's now, off to the side. There's nothing going on at this point. If it comes back, who knows, but we assume it's not. So the step that we had talked about and that we got ARPA funds to work on is to do a feasibility study. And the town is going to be issuing an RFP soon for someone to do that study. And the select board gave a little bit of guidance, but essentially it was, let's get moving and let's not repeat things that we've already done and waste money. That was the essence of what's going on. And then the town manager will build an RFP, or the town manager and town staff will build an RFP. The discussion for the select board then was, well, what else do we need to know that would be really helpful to them? And we have this group in Recalc that is actively engaged, did a great job on the first set of deliverables, and probably could do a lot of good to get us to this next step and to keep the momentum going in terms of everything that we're doing. So the board came up with two categories of things. One, immediate and related to the feasibility study that's coming. And the other that will be helpful information for anything that we do as it relates to a new senior center / community center. So there are two chunks. So on the first page, as John mentioned, at the very bottom where it says A, the first part relates to what could Recalc do to help in terms of making sure all the information that we collected, analyzed, made recommendations on gets into the hands and is clearly understood by the firm that we hire to do the feasibility study. So they don't have to waste any time doing much of anything. They've got what they need. What we talked about here was information obtained and developed through a review of best practices, the visits that we conducted, discussions with other centers that we did, the survey results, that we would provide a document and information to be used by the firm being hired to better help them do the study. So I see that as being, we put together all sorts of information. We have presentations, and I think those are useful. I think it'd be great to kind of put together a document that kind of summarizes, here's what we did, here's what's going on, here are the recommendations that we have, mostly as they relate to a facility, because that's most of really what we do, right? And that's what gets us now to the second side of the piece of paper. What are the additional things that would be really helpful? taking things forward. So B talks about a program focus. And again, here, I see Marilyn is in the waiting room. Jenna, if you're able to let her in.
Thank you for letting me know that.
You are welcome. Great. So part B here was talking a bit more about programs. It says using the above tools and potentially new interviews, explorations, and discussions at a programming review to help define what we may want to offer in terms of services for seniors in the center. Focus on other similar communities, best practices, enticing new participants in the 60+ age bracket to attend programs at the center. So if you remember, a lot of the discussions we had initially were facility focused and not so much program focused. This is suggesting that we add a program focus now. Not meant to reiterate things that we've already done, but to now kind of add. So it may be that we learn things about specifically age 60+, how to entice that group to want to come to the center for those activities. What are the best practices? What are other centers doing that are particularly effective? What are the things that I personally have interest in is what are the things where there are waiting lists? Like, what are the things that people really want? So that if at some point we decided, you know what, we're going to work together with Center B, Community B, what are the things that no matter what we have to have, otherwise they're not going to take place. So we can discuss more about these, but that was the program focus. C and D, we're saying, okay, what are the areas that we haven't really touched, or maybe we've touched, but we didn't do much of anything else with? So 2 specifics. 1, how do you fund this? How do you fund the activities to take place at the senior center? We know that not all communities rely just on the town budget to do the work. And the reason for that is it can't, operating budgets can't support kind of everything that's being talked about. So what do the people do? What are the financing mechanisms that are out there? How do people do it? We got some feedback from some of our interviews that may help us answer that question. I think we got to go out and ask the questions too, to figure out, how is this done? Are there grants and opportunities? What are the things that the center can do to raise funds? There is a Friends of Reading Senior 60+ 501c3 group that is either being formed or is formed. It's in process somewhere. What can they do? What are the kinds of things that go here? And the purpose of this is when it's time to move forward and get blessing from town meeting on here's the new facility, here's the new programming, here's how it's going to get paid for. We've got most of the answers already there. Instead of someone at town meeting raising their hand and saying, how are you going to afford this? How are you going to make that happen? And, I see it as a big drag in the operating. So this is getting ahead of it. So figure out things like donations, grants, town support, potentially other alternatives. And then D, we touched on this, and I know that we had a community member talk about this a little bit also. We know that transportation's a big issue. Getting to the center, frankly, getting from the center to other places also. What should we explore here? What are the best practices going on that other centers utilize to do this? What can we do? What are the different kinds of things that could happen? I know that one citizen had identified potentially a source for funding some of these things. There are communities that have built up kind of a volunteer Uber force. There are lots of different potential ideas here. And this document wasn't meant to say, here are the options. This document was meant to say, here's some things that would be great to have Recalc pursue. So that's what this document is.
I have a number of questions and comments, but I don't want to inject here. I want to hear from the other people. Questions, comments?
I do feel like there's a certain amount of duplication that would come with some of this, particularly on the program focus. It seems like that's been hashed out and hashed out and hashed out.
And COA gave us some feedback that suggested that's how they feel about this.
Because that was going to be one of my questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So they pushed back pretty hard on some of the elements of the program, no question.
So, and it would seem like people that work at elder services should almost be involved in that. I mean, who knows better than the people that are down there doing it every day?
So if I could, I think great in terms of what we're doing and some of the things that they're seeing. Recap may have a chance to kind of go broader, look at some other areas, see what's going on, understand some of these other best practices. This notion of how do you attract 60+ age group, I think is a really tough thing. And we certainly don't have it knocked. I don't think anybody would suggest that we do.
I don't think there's a senior center out there that can address that very easily.
So what are they doing and what should we?
Without it being a community center. Without it being a really community center in some ways. Because that's how you're gonna attract the 60+.
That could be some of what comes back.
I'm sorry, I couldn't exactly,
So without it being a full community center that attracts people 60+ as well too.
That was always one of my things. I think if it's not considered just for older folks, because people don't want to self.
Nighttime activities.
Right, you know, and there's a lot of people well into their 70s, you know, they don't necessarily go to the senior center. I mentioned to my wife, want to go on one of the trips.
Stigma.
Yeah, whereas if it's a place that you were going to, that people of all ages are just used to going to, and now you continue to go.
you know, just my experience for 10 years of going to the senior center, 10 years of being on the council on aging and talking to a ton of my friends. I think we just have to own up to the fact or realize the fact, there's a lot of people just plain don't care. A lot of people,
Don't care to
you know,
go.
Not just a few people, a lot of people who could care less about a senior center.
Right, but
I
how
didn't
about
address
when you
that.
have a big event, you get people that you don't get for anything else? In
Right.
other words, that would tell me that there are other people that certain things attract them, that they will go, but they won't be a regular participant at the seniors.
So what you're
Sure.
saying is you have to order free
Yes.
food and everything.
Well, that's, but
Well,
Yeah, we were noticing
It goes back to the facility. The facility is not attractive. People won't go there because it's an old facility and it doesn't offer a lot. Bathrooms are on the second floor. That's a problem.
and it's
You can't expand programs in the current environment.
And it's
It's really
crowded,
hard.
so you feel like.
And I know this now.
Sometimes people
More than others.
shy and don't want to initially
Yeah.
immerse themselves right away. They want to kind of like
It's not the
sit
shiny new
back
toy.
and kind of
Right.
see what's.
So we know all the reasons why not already. Okay, we don't need to do discovery on that. We need to figure out what would work.
What would work?
What do other people do that work? Does it suddenly bring in a flood of 60-year-olds forever? Probably not, but what do they do? So, for example, getting ready for registering for Medicare, things like that. Travel planning
Yeah.
could be kind of interesting. Grandkids, which I suddenly know a little bit more about. It's having activities potentially for them, with them, other things like that. And I don't pretend that I know the answer, or if we
The
can know the
current
answer.
center actually has done a wonderful job. If you ask the goers, they're very pleased with the programming and they do have some evening activities. And they also have some intergenerational and it's been very, very successful. But there are waiting lists because of the signs. There's a limit.
And so now we're saying we're going bigger, right? There's gonna be a bigger
Fill it
facility.
up, fill it up.
And what are the things that they go to Linfield for? Because I keep on hearing Linfield.
Oh, yeah, well, that's
Pom
nice.
pom
That's-
class is a big one, and we're, the pom pom class.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, we're actually going to be getting that
Looking into it.
instructor.
And
Yeah, she's
drumming,
coming
I
in the
think,
in the
some
winter.
goes to
Yep,
drumming.
drumming.
Yeah.
But they are very happy. I mean, there's a lot of new stuff and I don't know if you, John, but people are happy with
They have a
it.
lousy bridge group there, so I don't go to Linfield.
Yeah, and it's, to Mark's point too, even in Linfield, Rosemary told me that they have a monthly fee that the seniors pay every month. Or every,
Monthly fee.
yeah, to go to the programs, or a yearly fee
Oh.
that covers their program costs. So she's like, yeah, one day I forgot to pay, and they told me I couldn't go to pom pom class. So to Mark's point, it'll be interesting to see how people register for programs, what's popular at a bigger facility. Do they get 75 people in a peer community or something like that? So digging deeper into programming aspects in that nature could be beneficial. So,
And all this based on a bigger facility.
Yeah.
That's the point.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Even the existing facility, it's so hard because of the turnover capability as well too.
What do you mean?
Well, you have a function that happens, something that happens. Now you wanna get something else behind it
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah, moving things.
Chairs,
Yes.
tables.
Right.
Yeah, I need time.
Need time, we need staff.
This, I think, I suggest we think about this as, okay, now we've got a new facility of some sort. What are the things that we're gonna wanna do? How are we gonna do it? How are we gonna pay for it? How are we gonna get people there? What are the things that are gonna happen? How do we have some events where there are hundreds of people that either will attend or want to attend? What's that formula, right? And I shouldn't say formula. What are the kinds of things you do to help that happen?
How do you appeal to different kinds of people?
Yeah.
That's,
Dance lessons.
Well, like some-
dances,
well, some of the
concerts.
senior
Yeah.
centers, so.
That's what I think we need to bring in.
Right, and one of the things that appeal to men, because sometimes that's an issue.
Yeah,
Mhm.
issues.
It's a big issue.
Men, will feel comfortable going or wanna go. And there are places that do, they've worked out some, programs that are targeted towards men, just like they have programs targeted to different, language speaking groups,
Is there a men's club and a women's club?
And there's a men's huddle. It's slowly
Yeah, it's a little one.
taking root.
Right, so
There's a
that's-
There's a veterans group,
Yeah, I don't think
The right
we want to
guy,
answer it
veterans
today.
group.
I think we want to
Yeah.
determine how
a
to.
veterans group.
Right, well, that's why,
Predominantly all men.
at the same time that we're talking about the new charges, I think we gotta think in terms of implementation. What exactly is it that we're gonna do? And that particularly comes up with the B, how are we gonna work with the Council on Aging, staff, as well as, the members, because a lot of the programming things, definitely when I'm ready, they're gonna know a lot of that stuff. And especially some of the staff, because there are statewide meetings and conferences. I don't know if they attend from Reading, but I know every fall, they have a multi-day thing down in the Cape for staff from senior centers and Council on Aging. And they have all these kinds of things, just exactly what you're talking about. How do you fund it? What kind of program really was effective and why was it? So I think that would be important that we get the staff involved and support them to be engaged. They may very well be engaged in these things. I'm not saying they're not, but I think that's why they're important to be involved.
They do talk to other senior centers to get input on programs, using, even share resources sometimes as well too, because.
Yeah, whenever I'm in another senior center, I pick up the newsletter
Yeah.
and bring it back to Reading
Yeah,
so that they can see,
And Anna brings them home, she has a whole bunch of them, she's going through them, trying to find out what they have. So-
probably cursing me the whole time.
No, it's great, she loves it, so, yeah. So I agree with John, I think having people from the senior center come down and provide, the staff providing input, because I'm sure they have ideas as well too. They're the experts on what the constituents want, so.
Let's step back and take each one in what the appropriate way, because I think it could be like a joint, subgroup or whatever for some of the issues, but not for all of the issues, And so let's go for the very first one, as far as the new charges. The information, because that's the most immediate.
Yes.
We want to have input for the feasibility study. My question when I was reading it, how much of that is formatting and how much is new work? Because this part seemed to be, a lot of it we have done. In other words, we even have, John, since he put together a lot of this material, we did say, here are the priorities as far as program centers, like food thing, a large enough space that could be like dividable so you could do multiple things at one time. So there was a number of those things, but how much do you, in the select board envision, how much more
Yeah.
detail?
So I think a lot of it's here. I think a lot of it's done. I think it's, if you will, formatting it and making it digestible for someone who's just coming into it fresh. Maybe taking some recordings, in fact, of presentations that were made, that may be a part of it also, but in a way so that this group basically, in a few hours' time, let's say.
Yeah.
Is kind of up to speed with a lot of what we've already done and has referenceable materials when there's a question. Did they say, 100 people or 150 people or 200 people? What was that number?
Right, like referencing the survey.
Yeah, and the analysis and the conclusions, right? So I guess not just the final bullet points, which to some extent are here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 11, but enough detail so that these folks who are going out there and they're getting paid to now say, okay, we're gonna figure out what it needs to be and how it can work in location A, B, C, D, and E. As much as we give them so that they don't charge us, maybe that's a good way to think of it too.
With that in mind, but without, prejudicing the issue, that preliminary study for Walgreens involved some of the same thought process as far as identifying what are the key things, and the staff was there. How do we reference that and give that to them too? Like I said, I'm more
Yeah,
concerned
so-
about prejudicing, the.
So I think
design.
that's a decision to make, but the goal would be instead of saying to them, here are 10 documents, take a look.
Right.
We have a way to make it very easy for them to follow, to get more detail as needed. And again, each person on the team of this company can very quickly absorb all the information and be in a pretty good position and probably come ask some questions
I was
too.
gonna say, I would foresee that it would be a sit down, maybe a one-time sit down after they get the materials with us and with the COA.
I think the document that John put together would be the starting point to give to them.
I think it can be too. I think what we ought to do though, probably
It has-
assign some folks to kind
It has everything in there.
Yeah, let me just, so I was thinking a little bit about this, I have some other questions, but I kind of view the small, again, we talked a little bit about kind of teams, small little teams on each of these. And I was almost thinking that this would be like the team that would facilitate not only bringing them up to speed quickly, which I think is really important, that to your point, we have a wealth of knowledge that we could, quickly disseminate to them and highlight and point in the right direction. To your point, answer questions, because they're gonna have questions, what did you mean here, or where did this come from? And then 3, I actually think this group could actually facilitate the process, meaning that they may run into a question or an issue or something they're looking at. And keeping that group up to speed, they can say, well, wait a minute, let me go look at something else, or let me go drag in the right people to ask about a particular thing. And where these folks not only have knowledge of the work that we did, but also kind of the way things have developed in the town and different places we've looked at and COA and everything else, they could kind of serve as that conduit so that they have a focus group of these are the people. I mean, obviously they're reporting to the select board, but these are the people that you go to, ask the questions, they'll get you the answers. And if they can't, they'll make sure you're going to the right people. So I kind of was thinking about those kind of 3 basic things, if you will.
So you see that as a subset, John, of?
I was envisioning each of these to have a small group of 2 or 3
No, that's
people.
what I'm- yeah.
And it doesn't, not that we can't have an open meeting with them to start and whatnot, but I just think that to keep things effective and focused, I think that would be my recommendation anyhow.
Like, as a committee of the whole, it would take too long to.
Well, and the point then being that they, at each meeting, the team for the feasibility study comes up and presents, hey, we've had the following 3 interactions with the feasibility study, here are the questions they raised, here are the answers we gave them, these are the people we pointed them to. I mean, I think honestly, that's all I can manage. That's all I'd be able to digest on a regular basis without actually being involved in that. So I think at least that was my thought.
I think that's high value and not an exceptionally heavy lift,
Yeah.
but it's very high value.
All right, so.
I did have a quick follow-up question on this, though, and again, I not to delve too far into this, but one of the important aspects of this, and this may be a pre-thing, is the actual scope for what we're going to give these guys to do as the feasibility study. Has that been established at this point?
It's not finished. There's an RFP that targeting early July. Jenna, does that sound about right?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So it's, the select board did give some guidance in terms of what to do, and a lot of it was digest the information that we already have.
Right.
Don't waste time redoing what we've done.
Yep.
And do this feasibility study so that you understand kind of what the right elements should be and evaluate some potential locations with that in mind. And be able to come back to us with specific recommendations. And in later phases, dollars. To do that would cost X.
Right, and I guess like you would have to do that process first to have that consulting firm say, oh, well, you could maybe get X square feet at this location and X square feet at that location, and then it'll be your job to kind of determine holistically if it would be enough square footage and
Right, I mean,
all those details down the line.
it's kind of like, you're not gonna get, we know from a previous thing, you looking at, well, you're not gonna get everything.
Right.
I mean, the caveat I would make to make sure people, I'm not talking about a group of 3 people that are gonna make the decision on exactly what we do. That's not the point of this.
No, that's,
The point of this is, we want a small group of folks that can work with this team to establish the communication channels, to support them in identifying where things are, to facilitate, the process, and help in that, in the communication. And that's really what I envision.
well, do you see it pretty much like the subgroup that worked with the people of on Walgreens?
Exactly,
Okay, that's
Exactly.
for sure that I'm,
exactly.
The feasibility group, subgroup.
yes. Okay, so, let's nail that down, let's come up with a group. Can't be more than 3.
So,
Right.
can I just, before we go too far into this, so one of the things, and we talked briefly about this at some point, is that, so we got 4 bullet points on our new charter, if you will. And, what I was envisioning was exactly that. Each of the bullet points would have a small team associated with it. So I think it would be, I think it would be helpful, at least for everybody here, to kind of walk through each one of these first.
Okay.
And then at the end of that, say, okay, we're thinking 4 teams, right?
Yeah.
Okay, who's interested in what piece? Who would be the right skill set team person to put on that? And what other, and more importantly, what are we missing? Right, because we're gonna get to that.
Right, we're gonna get,
We are gonna get to that.
So anyhow, I just, before we, let's nail this one out, let's go through them. My suggestion is go through them all.
okay.
And give everybody insight into what we're talking about, and then we can figure out how to do that.
Is that okay with?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
So, all right, so if there's no more discussion on that, we'll move on to B, program focus. And were you here, John? Yeah, I think you were talking about the involvement of the COA and particularly staff on the programming side, because I think that's you go where the knowledge is. That sort of thing, and I think, not that we wouldn't have membership participation, I'm not saying that, but on this one, it's definitely, and we have more time. B, whoever works on B, it's really, it's time limited, you gotta move and get it done.
I mean,
Well, it'll be ongoing as well.
all of these things have impact to feasibility in some respects, right?
Yes.
Because if going through programming, you decide that there are things that you really want to do, but they require a certain amount of space and a particular view that we didn't actually account for, or maybe we didn't just more definitively establish, then that's something that we would feed into the feasibility group and say, hey, you should be aware of this, and, pass this along to the folks doing the work so that we can, update our assessment and figure out whether this makes sense or not. Just as an example.
Okay. So what form, let's see, what I have. And some of the things we already mentioned, because we're putting questions down here. Do we have a new questionnaire? Is there time for that? Is it like most popular programs, those that are filled to capacity, ones which attract people from outside, your community?
So I think
Do we
some of this already exists.
Right.
No need to do it again.
Okay.
However, other communities, we might not have the same level of information. What programs are there?
Well, that's what I was talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were
Yeah,
talking about here.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
That's,
Got it.
What I'm
So
talking
I
about-
think that could add some value, is to kind of understand what's, you know, where there's a lot of traction. You know, at some point, because we can't do everything, it may make sense to work together with a certain center, another certain center for a particular program. Maybe that's an idea, in which case, if we say we have to do everything here, then the number of the things we can do is limited. If we have to do everything here, then it's the same as there and there and there and there and there. Is that the right thing to do? I'm not 100% sure it is.
Yeah, I think the thing that came up though is there are gonna be some things that, like agencies that work with older people, there are some things that they all feel that they need to do.
Yep.
Like information referral, let's say, for example, you gotta be able to have that kind of, you didn't have to develop the thing, it could be an online thing that's a joint project, whatever, but you need to have your own person, live person that someone can talk to. So there, food, it seems like they all feel like food is an essential ingredient. So I think that's what we need to, and then there's a whole array of things that, a menu, because if you talk to 10 senior centers, I'm sure every single one has something that's nobody else is doing.
Yeah, as long as we're talking about food, maybe cooking turns out to be one of those examples. I
Yes.
don't know, but possibly it is.
So totally, it's how to cook for one person.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
that's a big,
Yeah, they've been thinking about doing stuff like that.
How to cook for one person, I
How
don't
to
know.
cook?
How to cook is a good one. What if there is a local community that does have a commercial kitchen? And it turns out that in the end, we decide not to have one, or it's more modest. Is that an opportunity to consider or not? And vice versa, if we decide to have a commercial kitchen, is
when
that
it comes
something
to
we're
food,
gonna?
I would talk to Mystic Valley for sure, because I know in my agency, you have to have a full-time nutritionist for these elder meal programs, all right? And most of them, if if they're not also a dietitian, you have to have at least a part-time dietitian, all the meals. But part of the thing, like I know at my agency that I used to run, is that we had classes that we did it at the councils on aging,
Yes.
or in housing buildings. It didn't have to just be, wherever you could have a certain mass of older people cooking for one. Because that was a big issue, especially in ethnic groups. When the spouse, especially there was a lot of Italian and Portuguese, when the spouse died and there was, you just do it for yourself, they weren't eating. They may not even getting dressed. Because it's kind of like, it was always a social thing. And so, so I think there are some resources
Great.
that we can, should be able to tap into.
I'm just looking on Council on Aging, website and the programs that they have. They have a conference every year. I don't know if they have one this year, but they had one last year.
Yep, Chris went.
And he had to go to that. They even have certifications. Interesting too.
That's the statewide thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
But
a
the
national
council-
certification, but most of them don't bother with the national certification actually, but most participate with the state members. Because there are monies that the state gives out through the councils on aging. First of all, every town and city gets a capitated amount based on your elder population. Then there's some demonstration projects that you can apply for. And then there are monies, the larger, like in categories that in recent years anyway, they were giving to the Council on Aging, statewide thing for them to disperse based on a competitive process. So there's those kind of monies and
That's it and C. Operating finance. You should be on there.
It's also leveraging other organizations, so AARP is another organization that I don't think we leverage enough. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I bet you have a fair number of members in this community of AARP.
So we just secured access
Oh, yep.
through AARP.
Yep, we have one volunteer, looking for two more
Yep.
for
To
a
do
tax
taxes.
prep volunteer.
Tax prep program.
Cool.
Yep, Anna's getting that going again.
And that was done through AARP.
I agree, that's C.
So, interesting thing on I think the way you're describing it, we have this view of core programming.
Yeah.
that we have, I think you were talking, that we have to kind of provide.
Sure.
Then there's kind of like, the next step is the programming that seems to have taken root in Reading, that people really, like and enjoy and already have demonstrated good attendances and et cetera. And, then there's, well, what else? Well, we are limited right now because of our space and our funding and resources. This goes back to what are the other priorities? And I think one of the things we did say in the report was we don't have a full answer on that. We are still kind of sorting this out. So in some respects, I see this programming focus, God bless, as a way to move to that, to help, flush those things out maybe in that way. And the only other comment I would make is in doing that, we should consider some of the implications of staffing and funding, just so we understand. But I think that's really what I saw that to be. I did not, so I listened in on one of the prior COA meetings, and I think Chris was talking about it because there was a discussion about the programming piece, and I like Chris' view, which is like, hey, I've gone to all these conferences, done other things, but it's always great to hear other views and go out and kind of reset what we're doing. So I think that's really what we're trying to accomplish. We're not trying to say you're doing anything wrong. We're saying, no, we really want to understand what things we are doing, what things we want to do, and what the implications of that are, and then how we can, potentially fold that into some of the other activities that the town has made commitments to do. I think that's really what the intent of that particular piece was. And without a doubt, we're going to have to, I think we do have to rely heavily on, COA, elder services, and I think it's worth to go back out and do a little bit of surveying of seeing what some of the other communities are doing. I think that would be, we didn't look at it that way, but it would be interesting, even just going on their websites and pulling down their flyers, you can get a really good view of what they're, who's doing these programs. And, we are going to be focused, we are going to be forced with some tough choices on space. There's no way I just think we're going to get around that. And I think I would rather argue for space that serves a need that we can identify versus one that, maybe all 7 towns around us do, that, okay, anybody can go to it, but why should we take that valuable space up when we might be able to use it for something? Just as an example, so.
Right, but we need to, also, as part of that is, do they have any capacity? 'Cause I remember talked to Wilmington.
That's
they said,
absolutely true,
We
yep.
would be happy to work with Reading, we've actually talked to them in the past, but we're maxed out, that's why they're getting a new.
Right, no, I think, again, there's a lot of work to this.
Yeah.
This is not, let's just see what we're doing. This is really, this group requires some real detailed homework and assessments and trade-offs and implications.
And this one too, though, I see is, and that's why you need to have the council involved from the beginning and the staff, is that it's ongoing. It's not gonna end with.
It's gonna be a snapshot.
Right.
It's gonna be a snapshot, but we're gonna have to project it out a bit, and we're gonna have to try to take that and see, well, how does that influence what we're trying to do?
No, but what I meant is, you have to look at, all right, year 1, year 2, year 3, in other words, both far as staffing on the programming side, so you want to be able to, for the facility thing, to be able to allow for that growth, not just what you can see you're gonna do in the first 2 years. And people have been patient as it is, and to the extent, I think there would be the excitement, and some of the benefit is that if you knew that things are coming down the road, and then you could think in terms of, if this is getting people excited, is there a way we can then do this with somebody else at a different location in town, that, as a temporary basis?
I've always advocated for do it now, if you can.
No, I know, you've been, yes.
So.
Yeah, North Reading has like 1 room in their senior center.
They have what?
1 room.
So that's all it is?
Yeah. Their senior center is smaller than ours.
Yeah.
But they're interested in what we're doing.
They are. They are.
That's something that we talked about before. It's an opportunity to work with them,
Do we have?
a joint facility.
We just applied for a joint grant with North Reading as well, a digital literacy grant, so,
I'm actually thinking about a facility, maybe they have more facility capabilities.
Yeah. yeah, absolutely.
Oh, properties,
think-
you mean?
I think,
On the
then to be honest with you, I think then you're gonna run into problems. Because the way I always describe it, somebody hasn't grown up in this area, it's more like Greek city-states. You know, you can talk about doing some collaboration, but if you're talking about physical location, like if they talked about a collaborative police, which I think is a good idea personally, but not gonna happen for all. You know, that really, public safety makes sense.
Sure.
You know, but if you said, but it's gonna be located, you know, in Andover for this reason, or even North Reading. I have a daughter who lives in North Reading. It's not that easy to get from parts of Reading to North Reading.
It would have to be like really on the line somewhere.
Yes.
Like on 28.
Do we have the paper copies of all those surveys?
There's a building.
Oh,
What do you mean, the physical?
Yeah, the physical paper copies that we all brought back from, when we visited all those.
I have the,
remember they were
I have the
faxed.
PDFs,
Yeah.
I have the electronic PDFs of them.
I think I tried to look at that once and it was hard to see on my screen, I don't know.
So I'm not talking about the spreadsheet, I mean, there's the actual PDF
Original,
versions.
yeah.
They were actually sent out as part of some of the meeting minute,
Kevin.
so I do not have the physical paper copies.
Was it going somewhere?
Those, I have no idea what those are. They went out, they went with Kevin when he retired, no, I really don't know, but I do have the PDFs that were scanned in after the fact. At least I believe I have them all.
But your question sounds like more access, not the fact that it was, you know, handwritten or whatever, but
No,
more
no,
access to
I
it.
mean, I think anybody who's in Group B could benefit a lot by rereading those.
Yeah,
And I think we're all
maybe-
familiar with the places we went to, but not as familiar with all the others.
Yeah, it
There's a lot of
might,
information there.
it might ring a bell, it's like, wow, you know, this one, love to learn more about, you know, what they do in that particular place.
Wasn't North Reading planning a new center?
I think at one point they were, I don't know where it stands though.
Because I was just looking, because I remembered and I was going back to my notes that they had, I don't have any more details on it, so I don't.
I see North Reading, watching a lot of the things that we're doing in town. And hoping to learn.
Oh, Michael, should get yours, by the way.
One thing on the programming thing that I wanted to know, because it's come up in the past, because Recreation has indicated they'd like to provide more programs.
Absolutely.
At this facility. I think we need to flesh that out. What are the things that Rec could do? Because this gets into cost, because we know Rec has done a really good job of financing.
We have the expert in the room.
Yeah, no, so I mean, that to me is,
I think that's a really good catch, yes. I know obviously that was something that came from staff in when we were reviewing the report, that they felt that there were great opportunities for that. I do think we have to be careful, just in terms of the focus and priorities, but I definitely think it's worth looking at that as well.
because also the model from Rec, as far as staffing, you bring on people that, they don't have to be full-time staff or even regular salary
They're
people. Yeah,
self-funded.
right, so, and a combination of self-funded, and then we could target, if you want to subsidize the program, then you can pick and choose, they're.
Yeah, no, that's a meeting.
All right, do we want to say anything else before we?
I would say the other shared resources in the library as well.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Library.
Library is a shared resource.
It would seem to me the Pleasant Street Center could be used at night, but Recreation doesn't seem to want to, from what I understand.
Yeah, I think the recreation space that we use at night is mostly in gymnasiums. So it's like basketball programs, archery, things like that, which that great room right now couldn't accommodate.
Pickleball.
But certainly if there was a bigger great room or, a gymnasium in the future senior center, then definitely it could be utilized more at night.
You're looking for a space for axe throwing, I heard.
I could see certain things, if done properly in a new facility, would definitely be a draw for other recreational programs.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
without a doubt.
Jenna, was there a fencing program?
Yes, we have a fencing program as well. The other thing too, like, arts and crafts in the evening or, things that are specific to like a classroom space. We can't have classroom space at the schools, which is understandable because the teachers don't want their rooms messied up. So, we don't really have a lot of access to spaces like
It's
that.
education, and that's gone in town. And I think that's,
High
It's
school,
very limited.
yeah. They do have community education.
Yeah, it's very limited.
so
Volunteers.
I can remember actually taking a course at 12, that was when I was involved in, on automotive thing, how do you do this small things?
You don't on the new cars anymore.
I know, yeah.
And right to repair is a problem.
Not like it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a facility, actually, you could bring back, there's a lot of, I think, untapped need there as far as,
Yeah, some educational nighttime offerings.
yeah.
That's how you get the 60+. Those
Yeah.
national programs
Yes, yeah.
at night.
I played bridge, you could do that class.
I've been asked about that in 2 different centers to run one of those.
Oh,
Oh, we got a
I'd
teacher.
probably take it, cause I was playing whist, but I didn't.
I don't think I'm patient enough to start with new people.
Oh.
No, I'm not talking about you, I'm
No, no,
talking in general.
Yes.
I mean, when I've been asked, I've thought, if I could take some of these people who know something about bridge and start teaching them, that works. But to start somebody brand new, I'm not that patient.
Mhm.
Noted.
One note.
So the programs that are popular, should we talk about some of those, like the trips?
I think now
Not
we're,
today.
right, now we're just seeing what we think it involves, and then who's gonna be working on it, okay?
All right, so.
So the next one is operating finance, I think we've already, that's come up. Is there anything else to say?
Well, except for the Friends of Reading Seniors, I don't know where that is
Oh, yeah, I'm actually on that.
That's
in
part of
process.
in process.
I mean, they're meeting with lawyers, accountants, just to be a 501(c)(3), there's a lot of documentation.
Yep.
But it doesn't take long, I mean, as far as being able to set that up, you can do it in 60 days.
But from my understanding,
Have it for a while.
once you send it in to get state approval, it takes a long time to get an answer back.
Well, I don't think. Well, that wasn't my, maybe it's different, but that's,
I think Friends of Reading pickleball was fairly quick.
Mike?
Yeah, I can speak to that. It took just like a week. You submitted the paperwork online and you got your answer in a week.
Really? I mean, we've got an attorney who's working pro bono, who will work pro bono, we've got an accountant who will work pro bono, to get us going.
Yeah, maybe you could reach out to Mike to see how they did it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm late. I'm not there, but I'd be happy to work with anybody on that.
we assigned you to 3 committees though.
Yeah, so far. Now let's talk about-
I knew that was in.
But I think that we have talked a lot about this one, and to the point that I think John was making also, the other thing the select board did is it said, hey, if you'd like, you can get 2 more associate members to join.
Oh, right.
And it would be pretty interesting as we look at this, decide where we see gaps and where it would be great to see if we can encourage some folks who have some background and or interest in those areas that would consider helping us out.
And it'd be interesting to know on that point though, how the Friends of Reading Council on Aging see themselves as far as raising monies, like business community is something that usually you want on board. They're a big component, but that's something that usually the friends of want to make sure they have a member on this community. So,
Well, the Friends are gonna have, I'm assuming they're gonna have their own mission, their own objectives, their own priorities, and so we have to be careful. The intent of this is not necessarily to take any credit for that at all. We're just trying to look
Oh,
at.
no, I don't want, I'm talking about
Right.
duplicating effort,
Okay.
that's all I'm talking about.
Or you-
No,
you're
no,
on
no.
it,
I'm
right?
on it and John's on it, yeah,
Okay.
and
I thought you were on it as well.
Yeah, she is.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
okay.
are. But yeah, to raise money like for supplies,
Fun things, pizza parties.
yeah, more programming,
Right, that's the
Yeah.
sort
You
of.
know,
I mean, our
movie and lunch, stuff like that.
fundraising, but
Yeah,
it's,
tramps.
it's,
I would wonder if there are people in town that would be willing to make some donations to support some of the activities that we're talking about. And we would need a vehicle for that to happen, and it may be that the Friends of Rec 60 Plus is the vehicle.
Banks are required by law, I know one of these banks advertise, oh, you wish so generous to the community, they're required,
you're required to
yes,
donate
yes,
But
cat money.
monies.
but there are also foundations, like Eastern Bank has a foundation.
Yes, they're very
And
good,
they're,
actually.
they are awesome in terms of community support, but what you gotta do is you gotta ask.
Oh, you have to find out too, because sometimes they have timings. You have to, they have cycles.
Yeah.
So you
Whether
have to have it
it
in by such and such a date and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's definitely money there.
I would love to be a part of the operating finance group if anyone is interested in having me on it. Just because that's something,
Great.
that's something that I've been working on, and I've spoke with Lexington, spoke with Andover, went there in person, chatted with them about revolving funds and if at Lexington, their community center, how like the rec could support elder services and how they are set up. So I'm really interested to see how something, whatever it is, could work in our town and digging deeper into their friends of groups. And so I'd really love to be a part of that conversation and learn more about that side of the financial logistics and how other towns do it. And I know just from speaking with some towns, they don't have it all figured out either.
Yeah, I bet very few have it.
Is that the only one you wanna be on?
I'm probably gonna be involved in all of them, I guess, right? But that's one that I really think that I could learn a lot and
I
something
put the
that,
name down already for that.
yeah. So if, and anyone with financial expertise can, or knowledge, I would love to have with me.
There's a lot of different ways that I saw, when we were looking through some of the stuff, like I keep thinking about Winchester, like what they've done.
Oh, yeah, with the junk center?
Completely different approach to
Sure.
financial than pretty much any other town I've seen.
Like what?
It's private, it's completely private. And they have their own foundation that runs the building and that does everything. It's its own, pretty much its own.
Well funded too.
Yeah, it's well funded.
It's the only center in the state that's not owned by the town.
Wow.
It's owned by, the corporation down there in Beverly, why can't I think of their name?
Cummings.
Cummings. So Cummings owns the building in the property.
So that's another great source that we need to understand, is the Cummings Foundation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, I looked into that too, because when I visited Andover, they redid their center and their Friends of group went out and solicited donations for the new senior center, and Cummings was one of them. And they're like, yeah, we'll give you $50,000 and if you put our name on your fitness center, like, so, hey, why not?
Yeah.
But obviously as town staff, we can't do that, but a Friends of group could do that for us. So,
We're working on it.
I know, I'm
Well, actually.
very appreciative.
Nancy Zimlack is working on it. She got hold of this and she's just like a dog with a rag. She's not gonna let it go until it comes to fruition.
Yeah,
She's doing a fantastic job.
that's great, that's what's needed. Volunteers like you and,
So I think this funding, financial operations does require a bit of insight into what we are currently doing, what we are paying, what our programs cost us, how do we structure it, how do we pay, the people that are actually running the programs, and then looking, to your point, look at some of the other centers, what they do, and even look at the way rec runs and kind of, so I think kind of a holistic view of the financial piece is what that group is really chartered to do.
What the trust, people, I didn't know until I was on the council 18 years ago, that there is a trust, that helps fund some of
Multiple
the.
trusts.
Yeah,
Multiple.
right, but there's purse strings are controlled.
I mean, we
Not all,
certainly
yeah.
certainly take that into consideration.
Yeah.
But you can't really.
No, and even like I said, the capitated amount from state, how is that, where does that go? So then they go with the,
I mean, we know some of the answers to this already. There's much more to look.
I think the other thing that's really important about this group is forecasting where this operation is going to be with a new center and with some of the program pushed out. What is that going to look like, and what is the ask going to be? Not just the capital ask, but the day-to-day ask in the future. I think that's something we have to have a better way of getting a good handle
I
on.
think the only good news about now that we have to, we don't have a ready-made possibility for a senior center, so it's gonna be a few years. I mean, is that
Positive.
A few years is better than
It's only
10.
going to die.
It's already gone up to 2 years.
then I think we can do some of that. In other words, we can be building.
No, again, yes.
Right, so we don't have to hit them with, here's what it's gonna need for that full-fledged
No,
senior center.
and I think, I mean, I've always had the opinion that it's nice to communicate this like far enough in
Yes.
advance and let people know and explain how, and if it, if the answer is, here's how we're gonna ramp, here's where we're but this is where we need to be.
Yeah.
And be able to explain that, I think people would be really appreciative of that. And then it'll make the budget process, and especially if we find, well, and by the way, we've identified all these other sources that are supporting this, and I mean, I think those are the good messages to bring.
I assume FinCom would be asking those questions, as well as other people.
FinCom and town meeting.
I would expect we should be prepared to provide those answers even before the questions are asked.
Yes, no.
Isn't that based on having a facility to support that though?
I'm sorry.
Isn't it based on a facility to support all of that? You can have all the money you want in a
Right,
bank.
no.
But this is, I mean, we're putting together the complete picture.
Yeah,
That's what we need to do.
Yep.
And I view it this way.
so parallel efforts going on.
We're gonna go to town meeting.
Yeah.
And we're gonna explain essentially how the senior activities in town, where they're gonna be, to some extent, what they're gonna be, not the specifics of it, 9 o'clock is what you're gonna do, but kind of what's gonna be there. The different funding sources, how much the town is being asked for, what other sources there are out there, how are we taking care of the needs of the community, a lot, the transportation piece that's here. It's a holistic approach in terms of what we're going in and looking to do and what we're asking them to fund. And any of us who are town meeting members, we're gonna be asking these questions, and you're spot on, you don't wait for them to ask the question. That's our responsibility to have the answers up front and make it part of the presentation.
We are gonna have to make some assumptions, no question. So I mean, but I think that's where none of these items are being done in a vacuum. They're all being done, that's why I said, we have these teams of folks that are working on these, but we have to kind of walk this process along all together. So as we get feedback from programming, as we get feedback from feasibility, as we get feedback from financial, from transportation, we kind of cross-pollinate that information so that it feeds into, oh, I didn't think about that. Okay, now I got to go back and look at, well, what's it going to cost me to do this? Or, that's a great idea, but, do we have the money for it? Or how are we going to get the programming for it? So I think I'm hoping that that's what this turns into, is that the groups kind of cross-pollinate their ideas and that kind of builds the information. But you're right, I don't.
To have assumptions made.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We're gonna be in a new facility.
Right.
We're gonna have more space. So now what?
Right, yep.
Yeah, I think of it more as and.
And
Right? We're gonna be in a new facility. And we wanna build in this kind of program. And, and Mike, we kind of have a close-up that you might wanna change.
So I can hear better.
Do we have a mic? Where are the microphones in here?
I know that's the camera. Where's
They in the ceiling?
They must be.
Oh,
So
yeah,
on the
right above us, yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, we'll, Mike, we'll speak up a little bit more. Is that better?
That's good. You're fine. No worries.
Yeah, what I'm thinking in my head too is for each of these subsets, from my point of view, when I think about operating and finance, like I have like a list of maybe like 10 to 15 questions that I could pinpoint in my head that I would love to ask all the centers, right? So I could like shoot them an email or set up a Zoom call and just go through really quick and just have them answer those top like 10 to 15 questions.
Oh,
And
that's.
then like the next time, like report back. And maybe if someone wants to team up with me on that, we could be on the Zoom together and kind of go over those questions together, and that might be like a good place to start. Or even just come up with the 10 to 15 questions and bring them back next month to discuss before we interview.
Yeah, get the inputs from some of the people also and make
Yeah.
sure you've got kind of the core.
Yeah,
Set of
if I didn't miss
questions.
anything, like, do you have a Friends of group? How do you utilize them? Do you have revolving funds? Do your instructors get paid directly still? Like, what are your best practices? Like, how many staff members do you have? Do you want more?
So you're talking about the finance.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're definitely okay.
yeah. It's just something that I just don't know enough about. So-
Mark, you mentioned also a senior center store or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah, the
yeah.
thrift shop.
Gift
Yeah.
shop.
Thrift
So
shop or-
Linfield is where I talked to them a little bit about that. And I remember going in and there was a woman at the till, at the cash register. And she was talking about, I was with the director of the center and she said, I'm gonna make my numbers this month. And I'm like, holy mackerel.
He's got a quota.
But they shared with me that they fund a lot of programming.
So how do they collect some money? How do they, where's the money go? Right, does it go to them?
It's a great question. I don't know.
That's a finance question.
Oh, because they have a friend zone, yeah.
Yeah,
Is
I
it
don't know.
is it a senior center that's running it or a friends organization? I mean,
We need to find out.
I didn't think,
Question.
Yeah.
I didn't
find
think
out.
as a council on aging, we could raise money. That's why this friends is getting.
Yeah.
So I'd be surprised if a senior center could be.
I would
It's probably
imagine
the friends,
it's a
yeah.
friends.
Yeah, and
I
when
mean, Stoneham's got a huge thing over there. They've got a whole barn for their thrift shop.
oh, okay.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
that's
see.
right.
I mean, it's big.
Danvers has one too, but I don't know how they run theirs either, so
So that's
Sounds like some
that's a great.
it's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, so good.
I added it.
All right. Is it time to go back and
You
try
want
to
to just close on transportation?
Oh,
Yeah,
transportation, sorry, yes, transportation.
So one of the needs that we uncovered, knew about, whatever, talked about, started to talk about was people who can't get to the center currently, or it's difficult to get to whatever the location's gonna be. And possibly also outbound, if you're there, going to places. So yeah, I know we have trips and things like that, but what do people do about transportation? We're not unique in terms of, we're the only town that has transportation needs. What's going on? How do they do it? We did have, I want Tom Model to hopefully spend some time with us. He looked into a few of the systems. There are volunteer-based Uber kinds of networks. There are, I think Tom knows someone who put together some kind of transportation system. Think about buses that would make stops at certain locations, or be on call, or whatever.
Is this beyond what they're doing today?
Yes, absolutely.
Why not expand what they're doing today?
That might be exactly the answer, but I think the question is, what is it we're trying to do? And then we figure out, okay, what's the best way to do it? Yeah, again, folks in other places do this, and I'm sure we can learn a lot from what worked, what didn't work, what you tried. Is there, funding? Are there funding sources for this?
And how do you coordinate it? Because usually, the more volunteers you have, the more it's like a necessity to have paid staff to train them, support them. There's
There's a lot of things that can happen on that trip.
Plus they're drivers, yeah, these volunteer drivers. Let's see.
Let's get this
Liability
expertise.
to the town.
Let's get the expertise to help us. Again, we're not the first community to
Yeah,
think
and
about
in
this.
Burlington, you can actually use Uber for seniors. For a set fee, and it's relatively reasonable, as long as it's within the town. If it's outside the town, then it's a different thing, but within the town, it's
Yeah, so maybe we figure out how to negotiate that.
yeah.
I definitely think that this group is really important to being able to expand the usage, to your points, the people, if they can't get there, then it's kind of irrelevant.
Can't go.
I think we should start, my perspective on this would be starting with, well, what are all the options that are in fact available? Just to even know that, and, looking at things that we may not even have considered. And then, there's as part of the surveys that we did the last time around, I do recall transportation information collected, now maybe not as in depth, but there's some information.
Right, that was one of our questions.
It was definitely one of our questions. So I think, looking at those things and revisiting that as well, it's been probably over a year. And these things change. So I see there's a huge opportunity to really, I don't know where this particular, so the interesting thing on this one, transportation, I don't know where it would lead us, where it's gonna end up, to be honest with you, because there potentially could be options that we just haven't even thought about.
And it's nothing to do with the senior center, just for seniors' mobility.
Yeah, this is,
Right.
and I think it's worth, having somebody, having a group look at this in detail and flush out, how do we take advantage of existing programs, or how do we expand what we have, or how do we come up with something new, or how do we potentially work with other communities that are doing some stuff in it.
Transportation is a good one to do regional.
It's definitely a really good, there's a research project certainly to begin with, but there could be some tangible, what grants are out there for transportation support in different areas.
Especially now, the federal government's going to spend billions of dollars distributed to cities and towns throughout the country for electrification of vehicles.
So I think it's definitely a important one, and it's going to require, I think, a fresh look.
There may be interesting partnerships also. For example, and John, you mentioning electrification just popped it into my head, but we should also talk to RMLD. And see what initiatives they might be interested in doing. And again, the regional notion for them is perfect because they service a few different communities.
I also think, aren't there like a couple of like the Sanborn Place, don't they have their own transportation stuff too? I think it'd be worth talking with those organizations to see, what do they do? How do they fund it? I'm assuming it's obviously a paid service of some sort, but
I thought Sanborn Place had nothing now.
I just don't know. I'm just saying that,
Right, I think one of the things to look at, because I was involved in a number of years ago in setting up a regional transportation for 3 communities, some from Cambridge, Medford, actually. And there are a lot of issues, but one of the things that you see happening, I don't know how much of it's going on. I know like Council on Aging has 2 vehicles, right?
Yes.
I'm sure there are.
One's just a backup.
I understand
Hardly gets used.
there are churches that have vehicles, they're not being utilized. I think it's kind of like, can everybody pool the resources, because it doesn't make, if you look at the numbers and everything, it doesn't make fiscal sense or good utilization to have everybody having their own vehicles.
And if we have an extra van that's not really being used, and people are having a hard time getting there, well, why?
Well, we used to, what we did in Malden, when I was involved in the program there years ago, the Meals on Wheels vehicles, because they had their own vehicles for Meals on Wheels, it wasn't people using their own, it was paid drivers, were used by the youth programs
Oh,
at
okay.
night. So it's almost, the possibilities can be exciting.
Could just be like, hey,
It's not like it's gonna be easy,
get
but
another
to the
full-time
extent
van driver
that
to
you
get
hit on one of these things, that's a plus.
I mean, on this, I guess I would also bring the caveat, we may not be able to fully solve this problem. So I don't want to set the expectation, we're going to come out with a transportation solution that's going to, fix it for everybody. But I think what we want to do is bite away at it, eat away at it, and find things to enhance it, improve it, and make sure we're trying to address the critical needs that are out there. And as much as we can do, and as many different ways as we can attack it, I think that's all we can really commit to at this point.
Did the park
committee come up with, besides parking, did they come up with transportation things as well too? Do we know?
I mean, the kiosks, I know.
Jen, you got
Besides
one
the-
person in that waiting room.
Besides,
It's Jackie.
no, I know they came up with
that
kiosks
plan,
and everything
yeah.
else, but did they
Oh.
address transportation or
I don't,
better ways to reduce the parking
I
problems?
don't think
I don't
so.
think so. I don't think that was in their charter.
And I know too with the transportation piece, just on a whim, I looked because we use ATS for our medical transportation. And I was like, oh, well, I wonder if they go on random trips, if people call them, and they do. So we already use ATS, so maybe there's a way to expand that contract and work with North Reading, regionalize somehow and see how much it would cost to, because you can call them anytime and schedule a ride. That's what they do for the medical transport.
And I would,
Um,
you know, I don't want to put anybody out of a job, but my thing is that you're much better off contracting unless you're a huge, you know, transportation thing, because there's downtime, you know, vehicles, you know, and maintenance, because if you don't do regular maintenance too and take them off. But that could, if you only have two vehicles or one's not, you know, and you already had these trips planned, that's disruptive. Whereas if it's a contract, somebody calls in sick,
There's another person.
that's, you know, that's their responsibility, you know, then the contract to deliver. So that's definitely something to take a look at, because you're already paying
ATS, alternative transportation system.
salaries and all that kind of thing.
You contract out to them?
Yep, so they're under a contract now with the town of Reading, through the Reading Response Program Trust. So they provide all the medical transportation for seniors
A lot of people
that,
aren't happy with them.
oh, really? I didn't hear that.
One of the problems, I guess the biggest problem is you have to tell them when you want to be at the facility and you have to tell them when you want to leave. And if the doctor is late or the doctor is slow, they don't wait around for you. You have to contact them again and maybe sit around for 2 hours till they come back.
That's probably.
I don't know if that's the company or it's a logistical problem, is that the doctors aren't necessarily gonna be on time. So
Right.
you booked a trip for a certain time, the doctors
Oh, I know. And
pitch in
and
when it pitch in.
it could be for a test or, you know, it could be for anything.
Yeah.
But that's why some people aren't happy with it.
Yeah,
Ride is like that.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a logistical. Yeah, but if you have a least time of the vehicles, maybe that turns into something different, who knows? But anyway, good
Okay,
fun group.
so now we ready to actually sign people up here, can't put it off any longer. So, the first one, A, committee for working with people, the designers for the feasibility study.
Michael,
Yeah,
so just so you know where we are, so we've gone through the 4 like key bullet core things.
Charge,
And
new charges.
what we're trying to do now, we've kind of discussed each one in terms of what the responsibilities will be, kind of what we foresee some of the activities. And so what we're trying to do now is assign or get people to volunteer for, you know, which of these 4 groups do you think do you want to be part of?
Okay.
And we're trying to do it so that, you know, there isn't too much of a heavy lift on each one, if you will.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure you were up to speed, because you joined a little late on that, so I just want to make sure you knew what we were doing.
thank you very much, John.
So I think that the first one, there's kind of an immediate responsibility in terms of what's going on. And then I think it's gonna be availability for support, answering questions, helping navigate, I think is a big deal. Right?
And here, on this one and all of them, even this one, programming side, ask ourselves, we only have 3 members here, otherwise it's gonna be, you know, you got a quorum, it's regular
Right.
meeting, but that
It's not a
doesn't mean,
subcommittee.
that doesn't mean you couldn't have people from outside reach out on it.
So that's a really good discussion point. I mean, we haven't gotten to the point about other
Right.
associates, but even beyond that.
That's what I'm thinking beyond that, yeah.
Yeah, I certainly I don't know, is there an issue with that from the perspective of creating a sub-team within the group? And then if there was another one or two people that wanted to participate, is that an issue from a?
Other members
No, no,
or
no, no,
outside?
no, outside, it's like an
Is that what the
outside.
associate?
So we don't, if you want to create a subcommittee and have each of the meetings be subject to open meeting law, and formally say, okay, you folks are responsible for this in all of the meetings, that's one approach.
No, I don't
You
want.
wanna do that?
Okay, then you want to have the group kind of say, okay, I'd like you folks to focus on this area.
Subgroup, working group, whatever you want to.
Yeah, working. Group sub is probably not a good one.
Okay.
Just, folks that are kind of gonna be working on this project.
Let's
We
call
want
them
them to
working
work on the
groups.
project.
Let's call them working groups. Is that okay? Working
Yes.
groups. So we've got the feasibility working group, the programming working group, the financial working group, and the transportation working group.
Yeah.
That seem reasonable?
Yes.
I'm just creating a quick spreadsheet to do this by person.
Okay.
Transportation, okay, ready, and we'll do our members. No, yes.
Hello, it's taking over your role there, John.
So
It's taking all these.
I'm letting
You're doing
spreadsheets.
spreadsheets.
I'm actually on vacation mode, so.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we're 7 currently.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Ready to rock and roll.
And add Jenna. Remember, she's already signed
Oh,
up.
yeah.
She's already signed up.
For finance.
Don't forget Jenna.
Might as well put me under all four.
Done, Jenna, you're there. I would like to be involved if I could in, I think the feasibility study support and then one other, and I would suggest maybe finance or transportation. But depending on what other people feel like.
did we agree that everyone should be involved in meeting with the group for the feasibility study first?
We didn't, in fact, I think we said the opposite.
Small group.
The initial group? I thought we
Yeah, I thought that was,
get
We
everyone's
don't have to
input
do
into the
that, but
feasibility group.
I thought that was the thing, that would be an initial. But I'm fine, whichever.
So can I make a really strong suggestion? The first activity needs to be to get them
Well,
informed,
that to be,
able to
that's,
ask questions
Yes,
and understand what's going on.
That's-
If instead we do kind of a group meeting and I'll start, yeah, we're gonna different things, we'll just spend a bunch more money and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to kind of have a second level maybe once this group has kind of fed a bunch of the information, they start having questions, maybe that's a good time to get together with a broader group.
I mean, I definitely think that there'll be points in that where they're gonna wanna come out and talk to a larger group anyhow, so I think that would be fine.
Probably the whole group and.
what's the better way to do it? So I was gonna go by, A, B, C, D. But Mark, maybe it would be better to do it, let's go by member and say which one do you wanna be, yeah. which
And
one do you
see how that works out,
Yeah.
and see if there
Well,
are overlaps,
is that-
see, we can do a little trading.
Is that okay, Mike? Did you understand what we?
I think that's great. And I'd be interested in programming and transportation, so.
Okay.
Like programming and transportation. Awesome.
I'd be interested in the feasibility, actually,
And
and the programming as well.
I'd be interested in B or D and or both.
all right,
Programming, B. And, A.
John?
Well,
You need to be on the first one. I think you need to be on the first one. Think about A.
okay, well then, put me down for funding.
Right? John?
I would do C and D, which would be the financing and the transportation.
Okay, so Jenna, I'm gonna just remove you for a moment from these, just to make it easier to see.
Yeah, I don't really count anyway. So I'm a staff member.
Oh,
so-
you count. Okay, so right now, just using our members here, we have 4 people that expressed interest in the feasibility study, 4 people for programming, 2 people for finance, and 3 people for transportation. So the first two, the feasibility study support and programming, right now, we probably should find one person to flop out of each. And
So who do we have in there for the feasibility study?
So,
Or
just,
we'll hop on it.
you wanna add something else?
I'll volunteer to flop out and go to finance.
I mean, that's really not my skill.
Right, so you don't have to do, we're not.
Yeah,
so,
Do they have to follow?
you know, before we just, while we're doing this, so, one of the things I thought we were also gonna try to do is, by looking at this, see where we might have some holes where we potentially could solicit some other people, because we do have two associate openings that we can fill.
Right, and also for the B, I definitely think there'd be people, staff from,
Well, I was gonna ask, not to make a formal commitment, but I mean, it sounds like, you know, Chris would be definitely somebody from, on the programming side that we would
Yeah.
wanna
yeah,
map into
he
that
would
group.
help, I'm sure he would help. Sure, I'd be very
So,
interested in that, sure.
You know, cause I think that, yes, you're gonna be on all four, but you can't be focused on all four. I mean,
And Ron also knows Anna pretty well, and
Right,
she's
Anna.
doing the programming.
yeah.
Hear it every night.
but she sings it too.
This is an FYI question for you. So I'm pretty much tied up to the middle of July, so I'm not gonna be able to do very much on that. So if you have a more immediate need with feasibility to begin with, like,
We don't, so the RFP hasn't been issued yet.
okay,
So
okay,
timing,
all right, fine.
you can take vacation.
I am going to.
Just from the notes, can you let me know who do you have for the different groups there?
Yeah, so so right now, under the feasibility study support, John Sasso, you, Ron, and myself would be the three, as of the moment. Programming, we have 4 people at the moment. So Ron, Nora, John Parsons, and Mike. Finance, John Sasso and Mark. Transportation, John O'Neill.
No, I had finance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
it's.
put you in the wrong spot. Okay, so
C&D,
finance.
yeah.
Oh, CND, I'm sorry, yeah. Okay, so finance group is John O'Neill, John Sasso, Mark Doxer. Transportation group right now is John O'Neill, John Parsons, Mike Coleman. Nora, I only have you in one activity, which is
I mean, you
programming.
could put me on something, but it's not really like trans,
So you should get preference in programming, I think, because you're kind of,
yeah.
that would be a good one.
Yeah, you go there.
Who was on transportation? John O'Neill, Michael Coleman.
John Parsons.
Is there any reason there couldn't be 4 on program?
It can be, just so long as we then, it's a quorum of the group, so now it's
a meeting
a
of retail.
subcommittee that we'd be creating
Yeah, I don't know.
to focus on that. Just means you have to have
Be a
open
meeting
meetings.
of- yeah.
Yeah.
But you can do it, and maybe it's a big enough one that's,
So there's only 2 on finance right now?
no, so so finance, John O'Neill, John Sasso, Mark Doxer.
Yeah.
Transport, John O'Neill, John Parsons, Mike Coleman. Programming at the moment, we have Nora, plus Ron, plus John Parsons, plus Mike Coleman.
I mean, if,
Why don't we go with,
because there's at least 3 in three, aren't there 3 committees with 3 and 1 with 4?
yeah,
That's,
So-
we don't have a real choice, right?
We can't have a
Because
fourth.
We have 7 people.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is, if one of these 4 dropped off and went to another one, then that group would have 4.
yes,
Right, right.
So,
Oh,
Right.
So
yeah.
basically, someone needs to drop from programming. And then we'll be.
or, it's,
Or we make it much more formal. We make it
Make
something.
Don't do it.
And where do the associates go?
So, we need the help. I think the associate
anywhere,
knows.
because they're not counted against the quorum.
Wow, so-
Yes, they would be.
They would be.
Does the quorum become 9 then?
No, the quorum is of voting members. So this is a good question that I don't know the answer
See, I
to.
didn't think associates were voting members.
They're not, you're correct. But if an associate, so what happens if you have, let's say you
Yeah,
had
I-
3
I-
voting members
I-
plus an associate?
Yes,
Is that a quorum of the meeting?
because the
Is that a quorum?
associate takes a voting, when you have a meet, I think you're right, Because we had to disrupt this issue in CPDC. If you have an associate meeting member and they show up to a meeting and only a smaller number than the normal group shows up, that associate automatically takes that voting position for
Right.
that meeting.
Right.
And they become I think they count on quorum. We should confirm that, but I
Well,
think that's
Council on
true.
Aging does that, they bring in the associate.
We've done that from time to time.
So we have some choices. We could find these experts and ask them to function as an expert, not go through the volunteer appointment committee and become an associate. Just
Wow,
Yeah,
just be an
that's-
expert resource.
that's good.
And folks may be very happy to do that.
Probably prefer that.
Could be.
Yeah.
So I think that we can figure that one out.
Are we allowed to do that, or will the select board get mad at us if we go out and recruit people to add into some of these and not make them associates?
I can't speak for my fellow board members. I wouldn't have a problem with it personally, but
All
I'm
right.
one of 5 votes.
Okay.
I think we need the expertise, and
Yes.
I think that people would applaud having the expertise.
I, on addition to that, I think we underestimate how much work there really is in this, and I want to make it a lighter load. And so having a few extra people to add into this would not be a bad idea.
Yeah, and if we did, couldn't they just do like subsets? Like if we had a bunch of things to tackle in finance, we could divide it out again if those experts join the group and
Yeah,
had
no, absolutely, that's,
have
that,
like
yeah.
someone dig deeper into like the friends of
well,
groups and have.
we could, but I just think having a couple extra resources to support this would be a good thing.
Yeah, no, I
Especially
agree.
on the program side. That would be indeed.
Yeah.
And that, I'll bring it up again, what do we want to do? We talked about having Chris, but any other people from
Staff.
seniors?
Yeah, so whether or not it's a quorum meeting, I would imagine that we want to encourage public input
Okay.
and talk about these meetings, all right? So
So you know what,
it may be that we want to make them subcommittees and kind of formalize the public input part of it that way. That's a possibility too.
I think I'm gonna recuse myself from the senior center programming one.
There may be other ways to get your voice heard.
Oh, well, now we have 3 in each one.
Now we have 3 in each one.
It's like John, I'm still working full-time, so I wanna make sure I can actually.
Yeah, no, fair. I'm in the same boat. So Nora, I feel like maybe we've underutilized you is the only question here.
Well,
Yeah,
but now if he's,
We got 3. Okay.
no, Ron's recusing himself.
So Ron's
So
gonna be on
Nora's
one.
just on programming.
Yeah,
and
and I'm
Ron's
just on
feasibility.
feasibility study.
That's okay, I let's
Let's start with that.
start with that, let's not try to overcomplicate this.
And I think that there certainly needs to be, for maybe not all the meetings, but some of the meetings, an opportunity to encourage public input. So it may be that we want to advertise a working group meeting.
We know one person.
But it can't be, I mean, we can't have others of us attend.
Yeah.
But we can encourage members of the public to attend. And it may be that we want to have an occasional public meeting of all of us that focuses on each
Yeah, I
area.
was just gonna say that's actually probably a more relevant thing, is like we wanna do a feasibility open meeting, but we're gonna do it as a group.
Everybody.
We're gonna do it at a recalc meeting and we're gonna, so that would be fine.
Yeah, maybe that's a great way to get the formal input, but I think we want informal input all the time, and I think we want to identify some experts, whether or not they're gonna become associates or not. We can discuss. We need a financial expert, I think, someone who has done some of this stuff and gets it, and I'm sure there's someone in the community that could be really helpful. In the transport side, we know we have some people already. Let's see if we can find some others. And John, you've got a lot of expertise there already, just to start.
You know, there are groups like the Rotary Club and the Lions Club, and they all,
Yeah.
they have.
Yeah, this could be something that they have a lot of interest in. So, in fact, why do I think about vans that way? Because I think oftentimes they will support that kind of an effort.
Well, don't they usually have a thing that a charity or a priority every year.
Yep.
You know, and,
Well, the Lions are big on site.
right, but the others, like Rotary, at least my experience in Kiwanis, they would, sometimes it's a national kind of thing,
Initiative,
priority,
right.
that this was they're working, but that doesn't mean locally that they can't choose to adopt.
So this discussion of it's called the BID, the business,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that is potentially being formed. But the point is the downtown businesses may say that it'd be great to bring people downtown. And maybe potentially willing to
They
support
have a
that.
loss to bring people downtown.
Lots of ideas.
Mark, who's got feasibility again?
You, Ron, myself. Programming is Nora, John Parsons, Mike Coltman. Finance, John O'Neill, John Sasso, Mark Doxer. Transport, John O'Neill, John Parsons, Mike Coltman. I can say this and send it to you, it's already,
I got it.
already built one.
I got the assignments done.
So transport was John O'Neill, Mike Coltman, and who's the third?
John
John
Parsons.
Parsons.
John Parsons, okay.
How are we gonna be working to, the logistics of, you know, setting meetings and each group, does someone take a lead, or how do we wanna
Well, since
proceed?
so let me ask this question, since each of these groups is less than a quorum, can we communicate via email?
We don't communicate
Why
with
is it
anybody
all-
else.
yeah.
Okay. So that's the way we can set up.
And maybe what we could do, John, is set up something of a schedule for the members of these working groups to kind of present to the full recalc, including, okay, you know, here's the plan. It'd be great to get some public input on this. We'd love to schedule that for our August recalc meeting, something like that. And make sure that we're gathering lots of public input. We've talked about there are certain areas with the COA, I think will be able to play a very important role in some of these pieces, no question. That's great. If there are other groups, you know, Recreation's gonna have some discussion on some of these. There'll be a bunch of folks that we probably want to bring in. Maybe so the question is there one person that would volunteer to kind of take the initiative for the working group?
Yes.
I think that makes sense, actually, to give a lead to each one.
Who would like to do so for their group? Stand up.
I'm happy to take it for funding.
Okay. Red. Okay,
I could take the lead for programming if you want.
fantastic. Oops. Transportation? John, Mike, not Mike, so John or John? John O or John P?
Just two of us?
No, Mike is on it as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so he's taking the lead on a different
Yeah,
group.
okay. What do you say, John?
You wanna grab it?
Not particularly, because anybody who's doing some of this should be fairly adept on a computer, and I'm not. So for me, it's a of getting back and forth to people. It's not my strong point.
Okay, I'll do
Get
it.
started. That'd be great.
Is that transportation? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
And I can take, yes, that was transportation. And I can start the discussion on feasibility study support of that. Right, and maybe a goal would be for our next meeting to have the folks who have talked and kind of put together thoughts on how to proceed.
Yes.
And maybe the feasibility study one needs to go even further than that. Kind of have a plan and start doing some stuff. Gathering at least. I think that the RFP, I would imagine that we're at least least 45 days out from having someone selected. Probably more than 45, but at least 45. So I think that's the timeline for that group having, their act together.
Have we worked with groups like this in Pennsylvania?
We have. So very formally, when we do a school, we hire someone to do this. And that's what's going on with Killam right now. That's on a much grander scale and a lot.
Are they contractors?
So they could be having strength in architecture. They've done studies, they've done assessments of kind of how to incorporate what you're looking for, what it's gonna take, what it would look like, how much it will cost. Those are the pieces, and then it's usually done in phases. So it's not like, boom, here's the project and go. But to give you an idea, the Killam study, we allocated 2.5 million, 2.25. Yeah, 2.2, yeah,
How much is budgeted?
Study.
for the study,
Yeah, for the
How
study.
much
which
budget-
includes architectural drawings.
How much is budgeted for the?
So we have whatever is left from the initial 300,000 that was allocated from ARPA funds by the select board. The select board indicated a desire to spend as little of that as possible on this aspect and save the funds for other activities. So I think that, again, it's in phases. But that's kind of a maximum, if you will. And hopefully, by doing a good job on this first part, we're gonna cut some of that out.
It could be a slow start just because of the summer, people away and that sort of thing, or it doesn't make any sense.
So, I mean, it's gonna be August.
Email, yeah.
Right, it's gonna be mid to late August, when this really kicks off, maybe September, mid to late August.
Well, what did we see as our, we're not finished, we could take a look at the associate members, but as through the associate members, I'm thinking of the importance of making sure we set a meeting date for the next meeting. Is that also going to be the date at which people are expected to have
Plan.
a plan or?
I think so.
All right, so that's not going to happen just in a couple of weeks.
What are you thinking? So you're away for a couple weeks anyway, early
I
July,
am, I'm leaving, I'm gone next 2 weeks.
okay, so late July? That makes sense for everybody.
Yeah, I'd say at the earliest would be late July.
Yeah, you're gonna lose me for a little bit after that.
This is for next meeting, John?
Yes, but before we.
So the last Wednesday in July would be the 26th. So that's 4 weeks.
I think I have the dog park meeting that night.
That's the 25th.
What do I have on the 26th?
I thought it was the 25th. Let me just check it.
When's SWAC? Is that the 24th?
Oh, I don't know what SWEC is.
I have to go to that.
Let me check the dog.
Yeah, I just said I would go to that today. I don't have to be there, but.
Dog Park Forum is 25th.
Okay, and SWEC is the 24th, so
26th.
that'll be a busy meeting week.
Oh,
Okay,
July 26th,
if that works.
Wednesday, July 26th.
time? Oh, this one was earlier. Is that
Great for
Seven
me.
the 7th?
6:30 is fine, yeah.
This slot is good for me.
Oh, okay.
6:30?
I
7.
got a little upset, I had to drive my son a little later today, but yeah, 6:30 to 8:30 fits right in the slot. So,
Okay.
And
And
associate.
is that when we're gonna,
What?
associates, yeah, I got that right.
Associate members.
Yep.
That's the only thing we have.
So from a process point of view, any person that wants to volunteer for anything in town, any kind of boards or committees, there's a form to fill out in the town clerk's office. And kind of you write down, no, not Corey's and stuff. You just need to write down what you are interested in. And then once we accumulate some of those, so these report to the select board in this case. We have a volunteer appointment subcommittee that meets regularly.
Who is it now?
It is Chris Haley and Jackie McCarthy who's on the
Oh,
board.
okay, Jackie, she's still.
So they would then interview candidates for typically multiple committees and boards at the same time. They interview those candidates, they come back with a recommendation to the full select board, the full select board takes a vote, and after that, approved, the person who's approved then comes in, I think they sign up, they have to, get onto the list, and then they're in. So that's the process for associates.
So we've gone back and forth as far as discussion. Do we want formal associates or we want to just have it be less, informal people?
I might say this, let's find the experts and expertise first, and then talk about what's the best way to have them fit. It may be that they would rather consult, if you will, as opposed to join membership.
Now, how about that person as far as the transportation? Because he's been,
Oh, Tom,
I would love to see if we could get Tom to participate. And
yeah, he would love it.
yeah, I think he would be happy to participate with some meetings. I won't speak for him, but my guess is he's less inclined to join a committee and more inclined to participate. But he can speak for me.
I think he consult only.
I think so.
Sorry.
I
Tom
almost
Model,
consult.
sorry, Tom, MOTTL, Tom
No,
Model.
I know, okay.
I think you're right.
But he'll be a great resource.
Done a lot of work in that space.
Yeah, he's basically got no interest in being on a committee. He just wants to.
He wants to do.
The certain.
Yeah,
He wants to do, he wants to get stuff done.
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot starting out the Friends of Reading Seniors. But then he was right, he was out of there in 2 seconds.
Tom knows a lot about a lot of the things we're working on here, so it'd be great to get some help.
And he's got his own 501(c)(3).
Yeah, which is awesome. So I think particularly on transportation, he would be great.
yes.
Yeah, I think he would from the conversations I've had with him.
In finance, I don't know, I think maybe we all kind of poke around the community a little bit and see what we can find.
Yeah, no, I always have one or two people that I think I can talk to as well, so.
Great, awesome. Yeah, the more expertise we can bring in, better it's gonna be.
Okay, is there anything else?
I have one question. I apologize for not bringing it up earlier, but I wanted to make a suggestion. So one of the things that Recalc did prior to this is we had a communication plan. And we used that to support our efforts and explain to the community what we were doing. I'm not suggesting that we stop communicating. We should still do that, although we're gonna have to figure out exactly how to do that.
Say,
One of the things I was thinking about though, so one of the objectives of that communication plan was focused really on the center itself and kind of educating the community on a whole bunch of things. And we're moving past that a bit in some respects, I think. So I was actually going to suggest, and I've talked to a few people on COA, but I'd like to actually suggest we hand the communication plan off formally to COA and get them to take ownership of it and, use the tools of planning out strategic communication, the types of things, the types of messaging, beyond just the pleasantries, but a more focused on, hey, how do we, like along the lines of the video and other things that we had even thought about trying to accomplish. And I think I don't want to see that effort stop. What we just talked about tonight is really going to be a full plate for us. And I don't really see, like I said, it's not that we won't at some point say, oh, we should do a report and summarize it and communicate it out to the community. We'll do that. But I don't want there to be this huge gap of time between what we are doing and what COA should continue to do. And I don't want to just dump it on them, but I think it's worthy of kind of handing the flag to them and saying, okay, we've kind of accomplished the things that we set out to accomplish relative to that activity to start, and it needs to keep going, and it was one of our recommendations, and I think it's a good home for it. So,
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
if folks are interested, if folks agree with that, I'd like to suggest we do that, and
I think it's a
Yeah,
great idea.
Yeah, I
Go
think
to the
they've done a
next-
great job with what they're communicating, and
I'll let you be the one to tell Marilyn, not me.
she's on the show.
And obviously, the whole group has to discuss it, but I
Yeah.
think that.
So how do we go about formally talking to them? 'Cause
Oh,
we-
there she is.
Well,
It's
so
not
we're-
like we're gonna,
Yeah, so it can be a sense of the
we can't
group,
tell them to.
No.
right, for the
I-
group to ask them to.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just, it's a recommendation was to say, communicate, show up, go to, if first of all, if we agree that this makes sense, that this is a good idea, then we can convey it to COA. I'm happy to go to COA and show them the plan and explain to them how we used it and what the value of it. And I mean, they've participated in a lot of the communications anyhow, so I don't see this as being a huge issue. I just think
Right,
it's,
I'm just talking about,
Yep. and
appropriate
they-
way of.
I mean, agreed. I'm not trying to say, by the way, you have to do this either, but I think it's better suited for them at this point, and I just don't want to see it lost.
Well, I think it should be connected with, we are willing, to support you in any way that you
Well,
think
sure.
that we can be helpful.
Right.
I think that's I think would be the message.
No, I agree. I think it's something COA would do, but I think the request should come outside from somebody not in the CNA, but from the outside. Outside being a recalc rather than,
Oh, yeah, I think John.
Yeah, no, yeah.
What do you mean outside?
that it not be like, say, you or me,
Oh, right.
somebody who's not on the council on aging should make that request to the council on aging.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm happy to present this officially if we as a group agree that this makes sense.
Think we
I
need a
think it
formal
makes sense.
vote or a consensus?
They can't vote.
We can't vote.
Agenda.
It wasn't put on the agenda.
All right.
But there seems to be a sense of the.
A consensus, yes. that's
Yes,
what it's-
positive.
So maybe this.
To be voted on
We can vote it at
July 26th.
July 26th, that's fine.
I'm not sure it requires a.
No, I don't, yeah,
All right, okay.
that's why I was saying, if this is like a sense of the group is clear, then we don't need to take a formal vote. I don't believe.
And
We're
the
not gonna-
COA doesn't meet until the second week in August now too, so.
Oh, okay.
We should just talk for a second. There were some requirements that the select board had in terms of reporting what we're doing back to the board.
We need to do that.
A quarterly report on progress. A presentation at town meeting in November. And a request that Recalc make and report substantial progress on these goals before the end of 2023.
I noted that.
2023.
Three.
I thought you said 2022. Been there, done that.
So we should just think about that also in terms of that's an additional communication vehicle, if you will, to the board, to town meeting, and then.
I think the subgroups, the teams, the working group structure will facilitate that quite a bit, I think. All right, that's all I had, I'm sorry.
No.
I apologize. I meant to actually send a note on it earlier and I just completely slipped my mind.
You have a question on the
Oh.
group if you want.
Okay, yeah, Marilyn, sorry, I didn't see.
Hi there. Great meeting you're having tonight. Hearing lots of good brainstorming and all. Regarding the communication, I can't obviously speak on behalf of the council because we're not in a council meeting, but personally, I certainly encourage you to write something, put something together. It's exactly what you have in mind. So we can think about resources it would take and what we do, and we can call a special meeting in July if necessary to discuss it. It doesn't have to wait till the middle of August. So anyway, just throwing in some support. It's an interesting idea.
Thank you, Marilyn. So John, will you take it upon yourself to write a formal?
I can write something, it's not gonna be very detailed, it'll be, just this is explaining what we're trying to accomplish and what the plan is and what we used it for. And I mean, these are things you all know, but yeah, I can do that, that's not a problem.
That'd be great. And John, if you want to talk, I'm available. We can Zoom or something to brainstorm about what
Sure.
this might be.
Okay.
So anyway, interesting. It's a good meeting you're having tonight. I'm encouraged by lots of things I'm hearing.
Given this flow, I might suggest back to your point, Rob, maybe we do want to put it on our agenda for the next meeting as a formal vote activity and everything else. I think the exploration is fine. It's not an agenda item, so we can't really do anything formal, but we could at our next meeting.
That's fine.
John, we're under vice chair, would you send the same thing to me?
It's already on the agenda for the 26th.
I mean, question
Okay,
John
sorry.
asked, so I'm sorry.
All right. We got a lot done tonight.
Thanks for stepping up, folks. This, I think this group really delivered very well earlier, and it makes sense to continue. And this is a chance to really kind of, run and do some things. We need to maintain the momentum of what's going on, and I think this is a really good way.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Nora got
We
second.
will vote. John Saxo,
Yes.
Mark Doxer,
Yes.
Nora,
Yes.
Beth Astley, Ron,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
John O'Neill, yes. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, sorry.
There was a little bit of interest finally accrued in that new trust fund.
Yes.
So I got the honor of.
One
being the
sec,
first
let
one
me
to make
just-
a fuss out of it,
Oh, good.
which made me happy.
Awesome. That's great.
Someone help me end this here.
Yeah.
I just saw this.
John, it was your new bridge something, right?
Oh, good.
Was there a supply of some sort?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I did it maybe because I wanted to be the first
Ah,
to ever
Ever,
make a motion to use
I
my
don't
wife's
blame you.
trust fund.
I think that's great.
I don't know if you could tell me if you were sitting there, but I was practically in tears doing it.
July.
Sign it in post.
Well, when is it?
RCTV is.
Now I just gonna sit
It
back.
has
and
a
wonder what
curve.
everybody's gonna do.
Yeah.
2019,
Oh, we're good.
time for July 20.